Do you ever wonder if some deaths aren't random fate at all, but planned with the cold precision of an engineer's blueprint? That morning, if I'd turned the key even once, I would have been sent into 1,000 pieces on the highway. But what my daughter-in-law didn't expect was that I'm still here to tell the whole story. That morning, the spring sun poured through the garage window and hit the silver sedan I'd been driving for nearly 10 years. I was wearing a freshly pressed black suit and adjusting my tie in the rearview mirror. This was no ordinary morning. I was getting ready to drive from Oakwood to Chicago for the reading of my son Daniel Evans's will. Just the word will sat heavy in my chest. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel, my only son, the man who'd built a cybersecurity company worth tens of millions, had died suddenly at 42. The doctor wrote, "Cause unknown," on his death certificate. For an engineer like me, that phrase felt like a blunt, dull knife. Vague, unsatisfying, but able to cut just as deep. I stepped over to the car and put my hand on the handle. A tremor ran through me, though I told myself it was just nerves about lawyers and legal papers. I inhaled, ready to pull the handle down. At that exact second, a shout ripped through the still morning. "Boris, don't start the engine. Stop right now." I froze, hand locked on the handle, my heart pounding like war drums. When I turned, I saw Mr. Jensen, the neighbor 2 houses down. He came tearing out the gate in slippers and a bathrobe, a retired cop moving faster than his robe suggested. His face was flushed, his eyes wide, equal parts fear and resolve. Just the sight of him told me this wasn't a prank. A battle-hardened man who'd seen too many crime scenes wouldn't scream like that over a hunch. I let go of the handle and stood there, rooted as if hypnotized. In that moment, my brain painted the worst possibilities. The sedan flying down the highway, the brakes not working, the car spinning and hitting the barrier. They'd find me mangled in the wreckage, another name added to some list. Jensen caught up to me, out of breath, his hand shaking as he gripped my shoulder, his voice steady but urgent. "Listen to me, Boris. Don't start the car. Something is very wrong." A man who'd worn the badge for 30 years, who'd seen more accidents than he could count, was shaking like that, and it made my skin crawl. I asked him quietly, my voice breaking, "What is it, Jensen?" He swallowed, eyes focused and sharp. "Last night I saw someone who looked a lot like Isabella hanging around your car," he said. "But they had a hood up, so I couldn't be certain. There was another man with her." The air in the garage suddenly felt thicker. Isabella, the widow who'd been dressed in black and crying for the past 3 weeks, suddenly looked like someone under suspicion. Jensen took another breath and kept talking. Around 11:55, I went to the bathroom and glanced out the window. I saw 2 hooded figures. One of them had the shape and the way the hair was tied that made me think of Isabella. "Open your hood." They were fiddling under the hood for 15 minutes, he said. When they saw my bedroom light, they panicked, slammed the hood down, and ran. My heart hammered in my ears, each beat like a hammer against my skull. Only one thought kept replaying. If Jensen was right, Isabella had tried to kill me. If I died, Isabella would inherit nearly $105 million. One staged traffic accident on the way to Chicago, an official ruling of accidental death, no questions asked. Then Daniel's whole fortune would fall into the hands of his young widow. I stepped back and looked at the familiar car with new suspicion. The body of the car still gleamed, unmarked. But I know how danger hides, like a snake in the grass waiting to strike. As an engineer by trade, I understood how simple it would be. One cut brake line, one loosened bolt, one small thing, and everything collapses. And Isabella couldn't possibly have planned all this on her own, I said, shivering at the thought. So who was the man with her? A mechanic? A criminal? Jensen kept his hand on my shoulder, eyes worried but steady. "Boris, I've seen accidents that looked random but were murders in disguise. If you'd started the car this morning, I'd probably be the one telling the police bad news right now." I held the key in my hand. It felt cold, and that chill sharpened my awareness. I nodded and whispered, You may have just saved my life, Jensen. In the quiet garage, the only sound was the sparrows outside, while my heart kept thrashing like it wanted to break free. I didn't know what the day would bring. But one thing was obvious. If it really was Isabella, she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And the man who'd been under that hood was the link to the truth. After we calmed down, I invited Jensen in. We sat at my kitchen table, the smell of coffee in the air and morning sunlight coming through the curtains. He was still catching his breath, but his eyes were steady with purpose. I poured him a glass of water while my mind raced, full of questions. Was Isabella actually involved? Who was that man? And what did they do during those 15 minutes under the hood? Jensen explained slowly. Since retiring, he'd struggled with insomnia and often found himself awake near midnight, staring out his window at the street. Last night, close to midnight, he noticed an old blue truck parked a few houses away. The streetlight showed two dark, hooded figures. One had a silhouette and a hurriedly tied hairstyle that made him think of Isabella. The other was bulky, wearing a battered leather jacket. They moved toward my garage with the quiet stealth of thieves. I recognized the way they moved right away, Jensen said, his voice low. With 30 years on the force, he had an eye for the hunched shoulders and cautious steps of people up to no good. The person who looked like Isabella stood watch while the man crouched and worked with a toolkit he brought along. From Jensen's upstairs window, he could see metal flashing in the streetlight. Sometimes the figure like Isabella would look around, anxious and alert, and the image made my back go cold. If it really had been Isabella, the image of the young widow, just 3 weeks after Daniel's death, sneaking into her father-in-law's garage at midnight with a stranger was something out of a nightmare. The thought of it terrified me. Everything she'd shown the world, the grieving wife, the elegant daughter-in-law, suddenly crumbled in my head. Jensen said that when he flipped on his bedroom light, the sudden glow startled them. The woman signaled the man, slammed the hood shut, and they both ran for the truck. He jumped into the driver's seat while she slid into the passenger side. The truck peeled away, tires squealing, leaving smoke and suspicion thicker than the night itself. I sat there, frozen, hanging on every word he said. What Jensen described left no room for coincidence. A normal woman wouldn't sneak into her father-in-law's garage at midnight, much less with a rough-looking man carrying professional tools. I tapped my fingers on the wooden table, trying to hold down the fury that was boiling up inside me. If Jensen hadn't seen them, if I hadn't been warned, I might have started that car this morning, driven onto the highway, and had my life ended in a staged crash. I've seen a lot of murders disguised as accidents, Jensen said, his voice dropping lower. Most of the time, the person behind it is family, he added. Outsiders rarely have such strong motives. Mr. Boris, I believe that shadow was your daughter-in-law, and that man with her was without doubt her accomplice, he told me. My hand shook around the glass of water. Every part of me wanted to call it unforgivable. Alongside that rage, the engineer in me started calculating. If Isabella truly wanted me gone, this couldn't have been hatched in a single night. It had to be planned, step by careful step. And that man, someone who knew enough to tamper with a car, was the linchpin. I remembered the times I'd seen Isabella after Daniel died. Black clothes, tears in front of folks. But there was a look in her eyes sometimes, cold and calculating. I kept telling myself maybe I was being a hard old man, biased against my daughter-in-law, but now those moments fit into a darker pattern. Jensen stared at me, steady and firm. You need to call a professional mechanic right away, he said. Photograph everything. Document the evidence. If I'm right, this is a carefully staged plot. We have to prove it. A chill slid down my spine as I nodded. This wasn't going to be an ordinary reading anymore. It had turned into a fight to survive. Daniel was dead, but I was still here, and I refused to be the next victim. I balled my hand into a fist and felt an inner voice. Isabella, if it was you, you've crossed the line. From now on, I'm going to expose the whole truth. After Jensen left, I stayed standing in the garage for a long time. The silver sedan sat quiet under the dim light, suddenly feeling like an accomplice in a crime. I looked at it as if it were a loaded gun, cocked and waiting for me to touch the trigger. I took out my phone and called an old friend, Donald Thompson. Donald and I had worked together back in the aircraft engine factory. Later, he opened his own shop and became one of the rare AS, Master Certified Mechanics in Chicago. If anyone could spot tampering, I figured it would be Donald. He answered right away, his voice warm but cautious. "Boris, you don't call me this early unless something's wrong. What's up?" I kept my voice steady. "Donald, I need you here. I think my car's been sabotaged. It's serious." There was a short silence. Then he said, "Don't touch the car. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes felt like an eternity. I walked circles around the sedan, staring at every familiar line of metal. I thought about all the oil changes and air filter swaps I'd done myself, how proud I'd been of that car's toughness. But this morning that trust turned into something dangerous. My own garage felt alien, clinical, like a lab where death was being engineered. A diesel rumble grew louder outside, Donald's small truck pulling up at the gate. He came in with his heavy toolbox, moving with the calm efficiency of a surgeon heading into surgery. "Tell me everything," he said as he opened his tools. I told him Jensen's story. Donald's expression darkened. "All right, let's get started." He put up a small mobile lift and raised the front of the car. A powerful flashlight cut across the undercarriage, picking out every pipe and joint. I stood close by, my heart hammering. Donald whistled softly and then spoke in a low voice. "I don't like what I'm seeing." He pointed to a section of the brake line where a thin, razor-like cut ran clean across, as if made by an industrial blade. "This isn't natural wear. It's been cut deliberately. If you'd driven another 10 miles, the brake fluid pressure would have dropped and the pedal would have gone to the floor with no resistance. On the highway at 70 miles an hour, you would have had no chance," he said. My throat tightened as the image of the car spinning into the barrier swept through my head. "Are you sure, Donald?" I asked, voice small. He nodded without hesitation. "I've worked in this field for 20 years. Natural wear leaves rough, jagged edges. This is smooth, like a knife through butter. Only specialized tools could do that." He moved to the steering linkage next. The bolts had been deliberately loosened with care. "Look at this," he said. "It's not come apart yet, but the more you drive, the looser it gets. Hit a sharp curve, and the system will fail. The car could roll." "This is no accident," he said flatly. "It was set up to cause a crash after a certain distance, a design for murder." I grabbed the edge of the workbench to steady myself. The truth was in front of me. I'd escaped by the slimmest margin, only because Jensen happened to wake up. And if Jensen had really seen Isabella, she couldn't have done this alone. "Who could do this?" I asked Donald. He wiped his brow and said, "A mechanic, someone who knows brake and steering systems well enough to cut and loosen things without immediate detection. This isn't the work of an amateur. If Isabella's involved, she had help." His words landed like the last hammer blow. The pieces matched Jensen's account. 2 figures under the streetlight. One watching, one doing the technical work. Donald lifted his phone, photographing each cut, each loosened bolt with methodical care. His voice was steady as he said, "This is evidence. You need to call the police. If necessary, I'll testify. No one can argue against this technical proof." I looked at him, gratitude welling up, but beneath it surged a raw, burning rage. Daniel was gone, and now it was clear I had become a target. Every sign pointed to Isabella, and if a mechanical accomplice was involved, both of them needed to be exposed. I stepped back, staring at the sedan suspended on the lift. Underneath, those precise cuts looked almost like bleeding wounds. In that moment, I swore to myself, "Daniel, my son, I will not let your death fade into silence. I will expose everything, and they will pay." The sedan hung in the garage, a silent witness to attempted murder. I thanked Donald, asked him to safeguard all the photographs, and promised we would discuss next steps later. But there was no time to delay. Today was Daniel's will reading, and I had to be there. I couldn't let the plotters believe I had fallen into their trap. I called a taxi. As the door closed, I sat silently in the back seat. The scent of old leather mixed with a faint hint of peppermint from the air freshener. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, then looked away, saying nothing. Good. I needed silence to think. The familiar streets of Oakwood slipped by. Green maples, quiet red brick houses, all unchanged. Yet everything had changed for me. Knowing someone in this peaceful neighborhood had plotted to kill me made the world feel like a stage, and I was the main character caught in an invisible snare. I pulled out my phone. In my photo folder, Daniel's medical records were still open. I read each line carefully. March 12th. Patient presents with fatigue, abdominal pain. March 18th. Rapid weight loss, persistent nausea. April 2nd. Body severely weakened, unresponsive to treatment. April 9th. Death certificate, cause unknown. Just 3 weeks from a healthy man, still exercising daily and eating carefully, to a body suddenly gone. I remember Daniel calling me, his voice weak but firm. Dad, if anything happens to me, watch out for Isabella. At the time, I brushed it off as paranoia brought on by painkillers. But riding the taxi into downtown Chicago, I finally understood. That warning had been his last testament. My throat tightened. Daniel's face flashed in my mind, eyes blazing with determination over a cybersecurity project, a confident smile signing a new contract, then the exhausted, fragile look on the hospital bed. A man like that couldn't collapse in just 3 weeks. So who shortened his life? My instincts told me Jensen was right. Isabella was not only connected to the car's sabotage, but might also be linked to Daniel's death. Perhaps, like the sedan, Daniel's death had been deliberately engineered, a slow-acting trap, a poison medicine couldn't detect until it was too late. The taxi crossed the Chicago River, sunlight glinting off the water. Skyscrapers rose ahead, reflecting the sun like countless watchful eyes. I felt like a lone warrior stepping onto a battlefield where traps had been laid to make me stumble. But this time, I already knew. I gripped my phone, hand trembling not from fear, but from rage and determination. Daniel was gone, but I was still alive. I would uncover the truth, even if proof was incomplete. Every detail, the medical records, the cuts under the car, pointed in the same direction. The taxi turned onto the main road toward the Loop, the heart of Chicago's financial district. Towering glass buildings reflected the sunlight, dazzling the eyes. I took a deep breath, straightened in my seat, imagining an invisible suit of armor surrounding me. In my mind, a vow echoed. Daniel, rest in peace. I will not let your death be forgotten. Those who killed you, who tried to kill me, will pay. The glass-fronted building of the law firm Mitchell and Diesel loomed ahead, windows reflecting the noon sun like countless eyes watching every step. The taxi stopped. I paid, lingering for a moment on the sidewalk. People rushed past, tidy suits and polished shoes, all hurrying as if racing against time. But to me, the world outside had dimmed. Only one face mattered, Isabella. I stepped through the revolving door. Cool air washed over me. The marble floor gleamed. The reception desk stood tall, leather chairs arranged neatly. And there, under a shaft of light from the large window, Isabella sat. An expensive fashion magazine rested loosely on her lap, her hand flipping pages without looking, trying to appear calm. But when her eyes met mine, everything shattered. Her face went pale, lips parted as if to speak. Then she swallowed her words. The magazine slipped from her hand, thudding against the floor, echoing strangely in the quiet lobby. I held her gaze. That brief startle alone told me everything. My safe arrival had been outside her calculations. I walked slowly, each step echoing across the stone floor like drumbeats. Isabella sprang up, forcing a smile to mask her shock. You? I didn't expect you to come, she said, voice thin, but trying to sound arrogant. I stopped, keeping my distance, voice steady. Really? Interesting. And why exactly did you think I wouldn't come? I emphasized each word, eyes never leaving hers. Isabella licked her lips, gaze darting away. I just thought you might not be well enough to travel far today. Her words fell flat on the marble, like a dull blade. I didn't reply immediately, tilting my head to study her more closely, letting silence build pressure. Then I lowered my voice, slightly tightened. Interesting. Someone told me my car was prowled around last night. Isabella's face shifted from pale to rigid. She blinked rapidly, forcing a weak smile. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Her hands gripped the edge of the chair tightly. I didn't need a confession. That strange man was the hand that made the plot possible, the true accomplice. Those shaking hands of hers told me enough. She wasn't innocent. The whole lobby seemed to thicken with tension. A couple of young lawyers walked by, caught a glimpse, and quickly looked the other way. Isabella still tried to patch together that polished image of a sophisticated widow, but the cracks were showing. I let the silence drag out, giving her just enough time to feel the weight of all those invisible eyes on her. At last, she let out a breath, straightened up, and raised her chin like someone clinging to control. Anyway, this will all be settled soon. Daniel left everything to me. You'll end up with nothing. I'm ready to live the life I deserve. She cast a glance toward the glittering buildings by Lake Michigan. See that? I've already put down a deposit on the penthouse there. In a few hours, it'll all be mine. Her words chilled me to the core. Daniel hadn't even found peace in his grave, and already she was shopping for her new kingdom. No grief, no pause for memory, just raw greed and ambition. I took a slow breath and kept my voice even. You should tread carefully, Isabella. Things don't always turn out the way you plan. Her eyes flickered with unease, though she tried to cover it with a bitter smile. You've always looked down on me, haven't you? Fine then, just wait and see. Right then, the frosted glass door marked conference room A opened. A secretary stepped out, her tone polite and professional. Mrs. Evans, Mr. Evans, please come in. Mr. Diesel is waiting. Isabella smoothed her dress and strode forward like a queen walking into her coronation. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor, each strike sounding like a countdown to her imagined victory. The conference room sat on the 47th floor, its wall of windows framing the deep blue of Lake Michigan. Sunlight poured across the long mahogany table and gleaming black leather chairs, every detail radiating authority and gravity. Attorney Paul Diesel stood as we entered, his gray hair neatly combed, gold-rimmed glasses catching the light. He extended a hand, voice steady and respectful. My condolences, Mr. Evans, Mrs. Evans. I gave a small nod. Isabella flashed a confident smile, like this was just a formality to crown her as the heir of everything Daniel had built. We sat. Isabella picked the chair facing the window, arranging herself so the sunlight highlighted her face, posing as if she were already the victor. I kept quiet, letting her soak in those last moments of illusion. Paul opened his briefcase with deliberate movements, spreading out a thick folder. His voice carried a calm authority. The will of Mr. Daniel Evans, dated March 25th, notarized and certified. 3 witnesses, including his personal physician. Isabella's lips curved faintly upward. She was certain she'd already won. In this document, Paul went on, Mr. Daniel Evans made clear his wish to provide for his father, Mr. Boris Evans. And furthermore, he paused for effect, then said clearly, the entirety of the estate, including the company, real estate, and accounts valued at approximately $105 million, shall be transferred to Mr. Boris Evans. The room froze. I could hear the tick of the clock and Isabella's quickened breath. Her eyes widened, color drained from her face as though she'd just been slapped. What? She choked out, barely more than a whisper. Paul remained composed, drawing out a sealed envelope and handing it to me. Additionally, Mr. Daniel left a personal letter addressed to his father. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was Daniel's, no doubt about it. Dad, I know Isabella is not sincere. If I don't make it, protect our family's assets and honor. I believe schemes are waiting behind our backs. Do not give her the chance to manipulate. I trust you. My eyes blurred with tears, but inside me burned a new fire. Even on his deathbed, Daniel had been thinking of me, protecting me. He'd seen through her long ago. And now, this was the final strike against her betrayal. Isabella shot up, her chair crashing to the floor with a violent crack. No, this is fake. I am his wife by law. Everything is mine. Her scream rattled through the elegant room. Paul calmly adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Evans, your husband had full legal right to prepare his will as he saw fit. This document includes a no-contest clause. If you attempt to challenge it, you risk forfeiting even the minimum share guaranteed by law. Isabella's face turned ghostly white. Her lips trembled, but anger blazed in her eyes. I'll sue. I have lawyers. You won't take a single cent, Boris. Her voice dripped with venom. I looked straight at her, her power stripped away, leaving only raw spite. My words came out cold, steady as steel. Daniel prepared for this day. You thought you held control, but the truth is, you never had anything. She staggered, clutching the table to keep herself from falling. The silence was deafening, broken only by my own heartbeat and a grim satisfaction. Her castles in the air, penthouses, parties, unlimited credit, disappeared with one sentence. When the meeting ended, I thought it was finished. Isabella raged and cursed, but the truth was undeniable. Everything belonged to me now. I walked out of Mitchell and Diesel with Daniel's letter in my pocket, my grief heavy but my heart lighter, knowing the mask of deceit had been torn away. But I had badly underestimated Isabella. 2 days later, her face appeared on the front page of a notorious Chicago tabloid. The headline screamed in red letters, "Greedy father steals inheritance, abandons grandchild." There she was, draped in black, red-eyed, clutching Daniel's framed photo. Behind her, the paper had printed a photo of me leaving the law office, stiff and stern, as if I'd just robbed a grieving widow. It didn't stop there. Social media lit up with swarms of fake accounts repeating the same story. He's just a selfish old man who stole from his daughter-in-law and tossed his grandchild aside. Greedy, heartless, no better than a cold capitalist. Every comment was a dagger. My neighbors started treating me differently. Some whispered behind my back. Some avoided me completely. One even smirked as I bent to grab my morning paper. "Mr. Evans, aren't you ashamed, fighting your young daughter-in-law for money?" Worse still, some distant relatives, people I barely ever heard from, started calling me out of the blue, accusing me. One cousin even said to my face, "You need to split the inheritance with Isabella, at least for the child." People online were saying things like, "You're cruel." I sat in my living room scrolling through every article and comment, feeling like the whole world was squeezing me into a corner. My chest tightened, not over money or reputation, but because I knew Isabella was behind the whole show. She'd hired PR lawyers and media handlers, polishing herself into the perfect victim while making me look like the villain. One afternoon, 2 police officers knocked on my door. They were polite, but their eyes searched me like they were testing for guilt. "We received a complaint from Mrs. Isabella Evans," one of them said. "She claims you made threats and may be a danger. We need your cooperation to ask a few questions." I froze, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. Isabella wasn't just manipulating the press. She wanted the law dragged in to chain me, at least in the court of public opinion. That night, I opened Daniel's letter again. His messy, strong handwriting pulled me back from the edge. "Don't trust her. I trust you." I read those words over and over, feeling Daniel's presence beside me, reminding me not to give up. Isabella could buy news space, hire PR lawyers, and spread lies all over. But the truth was still there. The cuts under the car, the odd medical records, Jensen's testimony, all the pieces waiting to be stitched together. I knew the fight was only starting, and the more fiercely Isabella attacked, the closer she edged toward exposing herself. But if I fell behind even one step, public opinion would bury me before the truth ever had a chance. 3 days after the will reading, while the scandal was still splashing across the press, an unexpected call came in. It was Mr. Sanchez, my neighbor across the street, a retired electronics engineer. His voice sounded urgent. "Boris, you need to come over right now. I have something you must see." I walked over feeling heavy with dread. Sanchez took me down to his basement, where he'd rigged a homemade security system with wide-angle cameras pointed at the street. He fired up his laptop and rewound to the night Jensen had warned me about. The footage was grainy, the streetlight weak, but it still showed two figures around midnight. One was small, hair pulled back quickly, wearing a dark dress. The other was taller, in a worn leather jacket, carrying a toolbox. They moved fast toward my garage. Sanchez pointed at the screen, his voice calm. I zoomed in as much as I could, but the faces aren't clear. They're hooded, the camera missed details. But look at that walk, that slight limp in the woman's step. I've seen it before. It's Isabella. I felt quiet. On the screen, the smaller figure lifted her head sometimes, the light catching strands of tied-back hair. Too similar to ignore, but not enough to convict. Sanchez kept going. And the man, the way he held that toolbox, his steady gait, not a rookie. I've spent my life in electronics. I can tell by the movement. That's a pro, someone used the tools. I nodded, feeling my chest tighten with a jumble of emotions. The footage didn't give clear faces, but it backed up Jensen's story and matched Donald's findings. A skilled mechanical hand was at work, and Isabella, at the very least, had been there. Sanchez fast-forwarded to the moment Jensen's bedroom light flicked on. Both figures startled. They pulled up their hoods and ran to a blue truck parked down the block. The camera caught a faint license plate. Only the first two characters were readable, AL, K9. I felt my breath catch. The first direct lead to an accomplice, a plate. Sanchez put a hand on my shoulder. "I don't want to get in the middle of your family, but I've lived here my whole life. I can't ignore what I saw. Keep this recording. You might need it." I gripped the USB with the video like it was a key piece of the puzzle. But I also knew Isabella wouldn't sit still. She'd built her media trap, and now she'd try to erase the real evidence. On the drive home, I watched the long shadows stretch across the street, and a cold thought sharpened. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a war between proof and lies. From that moment on, I had to stay a step ahead or be buried by a twisted version of the truth. That night in my study, the desk lamp threw a circle of light over a mess of papers and the USB from Sanchez. On my laptop, the frame paused on the two figures running to the blue truck. The glare blurred most of the plate, but the first characters were clear, ALK9. I zoomed into every frame, my eyes straining as if I could stare the rest of it into focus. The last digits were fuzzy, but I still had friends in the force. I called Lieutenant Linda Foster, an old colleague of Jensen who now ran the Illinois Vehicle Registration Office. "Boris, it's been a long time," she said when she picked up, her voice firm but familiar. "What's going on?" I dropped my voice. "Linda, I need help looking up a truck plate. Illinois plate starting with K9. I don't have the whole number, but there's camera footage. Can you help?" There was a pause on her end, then a soft sigh. "I can't share records casually, but send me the images and I'll take a look in a personal capacity. Just this once." I rushed to send the clip video. Less than an hour later, Linda called back. "Boris, I couldn't find an exact match, but there's one plate that fits the start. IL K9724. It belongs to Ryan Field, 38. Minor disorderly conduct record. Lives in Fairview suburbs. Works as a mobile mechanic. Be careful. This type isn't simple." That name hit me like a hammer. Ryan Field, a mechanic with a record living only a few miles away. Everything lined up with Donald's assessment. I wrote down the address, a cold sweat running down my back. The next day, I drove to Fairview. The street where Ryan lived was bleak, full of rundown garages with peeling paint and rusted steel doors. I stopped a few houses away and watched. A dusty blue truck sat out front. The plate matched the sequence Linda had given me exactly. My heart pounded and my hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. The garage door was cracked open. Through the gap, I saw a burly man in a grease-stained t-shirt bent over, welding a metal frame. His stance was steady, his movements practiced, just like the blurry figure on the camera footage. No doubt, this was the man who had tampered with my sedan. I lifted my phone and snapped a few quick photos. But just as I was about to drive away, Ryan looked up. His gaze swept across the street and lingered on my car for a tense moment. I sank low in the seat, heart hammering in my chest. He stared for a long beat, then curled his lips into a cold, calculated smile. I left immediately, sweat soaking through the back of my shirt. Ryan was clearly not someone to be underestimated, and if he was really working with Isabella, the two of them were far more prepared than I had imagined. That night, I called Jensen and recounted everything. He stayed quiet for a long moment before speaking firmly. "Boris, you've got the key. But don't act alone. We need more evidence. One wrong move now, and they could frame you as a trespasser, or even a harasser." I sat still, clutching the photos I had taken. Ryan Field, the mechanical hand lurking in the shadows. I knew he was the piece that could change the entire game. But I also knew that every step closer to the truth meant stepping deeper into danger. Jensen and I might even be under surveillance. After meeting at a cafe, Jensen and I stayed behind to strategize. He tapped the table lightly, lowering his voice. "Isabella's a fox. She won't confess. If we want evidence, we need to deal with Ryan. Guys like him aren't loyal. He's a small-time thug, deep into gambling. He'll run out of cash and come back to squeeze more. Eventually, he'll talk." I nodded, understanding immediately. Isabella may have been cunning, but her mechanical accomplice was different. He had leverage over her. Sooner or later, that pressure would make him a liability. We just had to wait for the right moment. Jensen called a few trusted former colleagues, who agreed to help off the books. "We can't set a direct trap," he said, "but surveillance is legal." Over the next 7 days, Jensen's team took turns tailing Ryan Field. He drifted between third-rate bars in Fairview or parked himself at slot machines in nearby suburbs, feeding machines dollar after dollar. The man was a hollow barrel, ready to sell out anyone for cash. On the 8th day, the break came. A team member reported that Ryan had arranged to meet Isabella at a quiet cafe in the West Loop. Worn tables, only a few customers. Jensen deployed a subtle tactic. One of his men posed as a courier carrying a stack of fake files and passed their table just as Isabella and Ryan sat down. While picking up the dropped papers, the man secretly attached a tiny recorder beneath the table. Isabella arrived first, dressed in a fitted black dress, hair pinned up quickly, her posture tense. She chose a corner table, fingers tapping lightly on the wood. 5 minutes later, Ryan appeared, wrinkled leather jacket, bloodshot eyes from little sleep. He dropped into the chair and pulled the water glass toward him. At that moment, the courier walked by, and the file stack tumbled to the floor. Bending down to gather the papers and apologize, he managed to secure the recorder under the table without either of them noticing. The conversation that followed was captured completely. Ryan's voice was sharp, bitter. "Listen, Isabella, I need money. $50,000 right now, or I talk." Isabella snapped back. "I've paid you enough. That night, you did your part. Cut the brakes, loosen the bolts. I don't owe you anything more." Ryan let out a sour laugh. "You think it's that simple to walk away? I know exactly what we did in your father-in-law's garage. If I talk, we both go down. Difference is I'm used to prison. You're not. Don't want to get dragged into the mud? Pay up. $50,000 was nothing for a widow about to inherit tens of millions. Isabella was silent for a few seconds, then whispered, "Are you threatening me?" Ryan leaned closer, voice low. "Not a threat. A warning. I owe gambling sharks. They're after me this week. If I go down, I pull you with me. Your choice." The sound of Isabella grinding her teeth, then a wad of cash hitting the table. She exhaled sharply. $50,000. But this is the last time. Ryan scooped up the money with a sneer. "Don't be stupid. There'll be a next time. I own your secret now, Isabella. Remember that." The recording ended with the scrape of chairs and Isabella's hurried exit. That night, Jensen played every word through the speakers in my living room. Isabella's voice, Ryan's voice. They had incriminated themselves. Jensen's eyes lit up. "Boris, this is gold. With this audio, plus the camera footage and Donald's technical analysis, we can push the prosecutor to open a criminal case." Isabella just dug her own grave. I sat quietly, listening to Isabella's quivering words echo through the small speaker, a cold weight spreading across my chest. No more guessing. No more doubts. The truth was now etched in every word, every syllable, and I knew the day of reckoning was coming. When the audio ended, the room sank into a heavy silence. I stayed motionless, every nerve stretched tight, every word from Isabella, every derisive chuckle from Ryan hitting like hammer blows. I thought I was prepared for anything, but hearing the truth so clearly still cut deep. Jensen carefully placed the recorder in a signal-shielded pouch, voice grave. "This is direct evidence. Isabella can't deny it now. But to secure a conviction, we need more. I want the whole picture assembled. When the prosecutor gets the files, they won't be able to ignore it." In the following days, Jensen, Donald, and I went all in. Donald provided a series of close-up photos from beneath the car, the razor-clean cut on the brake line, the precisely loosened tie rod bolt. He also compiled a 10-page technical report comparing the damage to known stage crashes, conclusively showing deliberate sabotage. Jensen reached out to a few former colleagues in the police department. One pulled street corner camera footage near my house. In the clip, exactly at 11:47 that night, an old blue truck stopped a few houses from my garage. Two figures stepped out, both with baseball caps pulled low and scarves around their necks. Their faces were obscured, but the smaller figure revealed faint strands of long hair under her cap. Unmistakably Isabella. Everything lined up perfectly. "We don't need clear faces," Jensen said, his eyes sharp and seasoned. "We only need to show that timing and context match. Add the audio, and any prosecutor will see the whole picture. We don't need absolute proof. We just need enough for a jury to believe Isabella took part." I sat in the living room, surrounded by the wooden table covered in documents, Daniel's medical records, the will, his handwritten letter, the undercarriage photos, the technical report, the street camera footage, and now the audio recording. Each piece was like a brick, and together they formed a solid wall boxing in Isabella and Ryan. Sometimes I just sat quietly, thinking of Daniel. I remembered him running through the house with a toy airplane I had built, his laughter, his dreams. His steps toward adulthood had been stolen by greed and betrayal. I gripped his letter and whispered softly, "Rest now. I'll handle the rest." Jensen sat across from me, his gaze stern. "Boris, it's time to file with the DA's office, but there's one last step. We need a public reveal, not just for the court, but for everyone to see her true face. Isabella used the media to humiliate you. Now, we return the favor tenfold." I looked at him and slowly nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something solid inside me. Conviction. Not a fragile hope, but a firm belief that justice would be on my side. That night, watching Chicago blaze beneath the window, I realized a new chapter had begun. Isabella would no longer control public opinion. She would be the defendant standing before the bench. 3 days after Jensen submitted the full file to the prosecutor, a thick sealed envelope arrived. Inside was an official summons. I was required to appear at the Cook County Court on May 28th as a key witness in the criminal case against Isabella Evans and Ryan Field. My hands trembled as I held it. I had spent years surrounded by the silence of machines and technical drawings, but now my name was on a legal document, not as an engineer, but as a witness in an attempted murder case. I took a deep breath and forced calm. Jensen put a firm hand on my shoulder. This is the turning point, Boris. From here on, it's no longer an underground battle. Isabella used public opinion to make you look greedy, to smear you. Now justice is not just in the courtroom. The public needs to see her true face too. Donald nodded in agreement. You are not alone. We'll stand in court with you. The evidence isn't just technically strong. It's powerful enough to move the jury and the people watching. Jensen went further, contacting a veteran investigative reporter at the Chicago Tribune. The reporter agreed to follow the trial from the start and report the story truthfully once records were released. Jensen said plainly, Isabella tried to make you a villain in the public eye, but now the media itself will be the mirror exposing her mask. During the days leading up to the trial, I lived in a strange limbo. By day, I read every page of the file carefully and rehearsed Q&A with Jensen like a cross-examination drill. By night, I sat by the window, staring at the city lights, my heart a mix of anxiety and anticipation. One morning, stepping out for the newspaper, I overheard neighbors whispering, "The trial's coming. Maybe Mr. Evans isn't as greedy as the tabloids said." I froze, then quietly turned away, realizing Jensen was right. Public opinion was starting to crack. When the truth came out, Isabella Evans's name would become a permanent stain. I folded the summons and placed it in my breast pocket, hand clenched tight, remembering Daniel's words, "Don't trust her." I trust you. The moment had finally arrived. This trial wasn't just about me. It was about justice for my son. On May 28th, under a sky heavy with gray clouds, I entered the Cook County Courthouse, Daniel's letter in my pocket. Every step felt weighted with decades of grief and determination. Yet I knew this was the day justice would be named. Isabella arrived after me, wearing a fitted black dress, hair pinned neatly, makeup flawless, smiling softly at the press, playing the part of the grieving widow once more. Ryan Field followed, flanked by police, still swaggering, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. The courtroom was packed. The prosecutor opened. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we will show that Isabella Evans not only schemed to seize assets, but also conspired with Ryan Field to murder her father-in-law by sabotaging his vehicle. This was a deliberate plan to kill." Immediately, Isabella's defense attorney rose. "Objection. These charges rely entirely on circumstantial evidence. Faces are unclear on the video. The audio could be doctored. My client is merely a victim of extortion." The judge nodded. "Objection noted. We will hear all the evidence." The first piece presented was the surveillance video. The screen showed two figures approaching my garage from an old truck at midnight. The defense waved. "You see? Faces are hidden. This could be anyone. You cannot pin this on Mrs. Evans." The prosecutor smiled. "Please wait for the next part." The second piece of evidence was Donald's technical report. He testified clearly. "I've worked 20 years in this field. The cut on the brake line is extremely sharp, only possible with an industrial blade. The tie rod bolts were loosened just enough to fail after a few miles. This was not an accident. It was a design to kill." The defense sprang up. "Are you sure this isn't natural wear? You're speculating." Donald held up large photos. "Where creates jagged, rough edges. This is smooth, like cutting butter. I swear before this court, this was deliberate sabotage." Next came the financial records. The prosecutor displayed bank statements showing $100,000 transferred from Isabella's account to Ryan's exactly 3 days before the car was sabotaged alongside ATM footage of Ryan withdrawing the money. The courtroom buzzed. Finally came the audio recording, filling the room. Isabella, it played. That night you just did your part. Cut the brakes, loosen the bolts. I don't owe you another cent. And Ryan, I hold your secret in my hand now, Isabella. Isabella jumped to her feet, shouting, "That was a setup. I paid him only because he threatened me. I'm a victim too." Ryan sneered. "Stop pretending you hired me." The courtroom erupted in noise. Isabella spun around, screaming, "You bastard. If you hadn't demanded more, I wouldn't have." Her words trailed off, but the jury already caught the truth. Finally, the prosecutor read Daniel's handwritten letter aloud. "Dad, I know Isabella is not sincere. If I do not make it, please protect our family's assets and honor. Do not trust her. I trust you." The room went completely silent. The defense tried to recover. This letter could be forged. Who can prove it's real? The prosecutor calmly explained the financial timeline. The $100,000 transfer in the statements was the initial payment withdrawn from an ATM on April 10th, and the $50,000 in the audio was additional hush money tied to gambling debts. Two separate transactions, two purposes, but both pointing to a single plot. Then the prosecutor called Daniel's personal doctor, one of the three witnesses to the will. "This is indeed Daniel's handwriting. I witnessed him write this letter." The courtroom erupted. Isabella slumped into her chair, face pale as ash, while Ryan fumed beside her. "She put me up to it. She wanted the old man dead for the money." The jury deliberated for just over an hour. When they returned, the foreperson announced, "We find the defendant Isabella Evans guilty of first-degree conspiracy to commit murder and vehicle sabotage, and the defendant Ryan Field guilty of accomplice to sabotage, extortion, and witness intimidation." Judge Sullivan's voice rang out, hard as steel. "Considering the severity of the crimes, this court sentences Isabella Evans to 25 years in prison, with no parole before 20 years. Ryan Field is sentenced to 18 years in prison, with no parole before 15 years. Court is adjourned." Isabella wailed, her makeup smeared, no longer the composed widow she had pretended to be. Ryan, handcuffed, was dragged out, still cursing loudly. Outside, reporters crowded around, cameras flashing. Someone shouted, "Mr. Evans, do you have anything to say after all this?" I clutched Daniel's letter and looked straight into the camera lens. Only one thing came to mind. The truth can be buried, but in the end, it always wins. A cold wind from Lake Michigan swept across the courthouse steps, blowing the gray clouds away. And I felt it. Somewhere, Daniel was smiling. Justice had finally been served. Isabella paid for her greed. Ryan was punished for his betrayal. And as for me, I had kept my promise to my son, to protect honor and truth. If you believe the truth always wins, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Every bit of your support gives me the strength to keep sharing the things many want to hide.